Hey guys, welcome back to Harvey and Jill's Not So Perfect Reviews. And as you can probably tell by my attire, it is time for Suicide Squad. This has been one of the most anticipated movies of the entire summer, and now it's finally out. I got to see it on opening night, and I took a bit of time to kind of get my thoughts together about what I actually saw. Because while there was so much hype, in the week just before its like official release, where there were critics actually going to see it and getting like the, I guess, the preview to let their readers know what they thought, there was a lot of negativity surrounding Suicide Squad. Unfortunately, Rotten Tomatoes was giving it about an average of about 33%, but now I think it's down to about 26, at least on the critics side. However, since that time, and now that it is available to the rest of the world, the general audience, the general audience was a lot more supportive of it and, enjoyed it a lot more, giving it an average rating of about, either 7 out of 10 if we're talking about IMDb, or about 70-ish% for Rotten Tomatoes. So, what is my main impression of the film? Well, it's pretty good actually overall. I was entertained. I liked the cast. It was very diverse. The music I felt was very fitting for what they had. It kind of made things a little bit more lively here and there. It really punched up the action scenes. Also, the tone and visuals of it were just spot on. I mean, it was still gritty, which is what you would expect from a DC film, but it wasn't the grim dark that you're used to from things like, Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, or even Man of Steel. There's a bit more lightness, a bit more color, and it just kind of helps everything pop a little bit more. So while I say that, it's a pretty good film, definitely worth watching, you'll be entertained. Does that mean that this film is without flaws? And the answer, of course, is of course not. Hell no. There are definitely flaws here and there, but before we get into that, I just kind of want to do a quick rundown of the actual plot. So, going forward, we're going to have lots of spoilers for Suicide Squad, so if you're not here for that, you're looking for a spoiler-free review, click away now, won't be offended, but there also will be spoilers for Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, as certain events are mentioned. Anyway, once again, just click away if you don't want spoilers. If not, let's talk about what actually happens in the film. In the aftermath of Batman v Superman and the death of Superman, Amanda Waller, a cutthroat government agent, tries to convince members of the Department of Justice to allow her to assemble a covert special ops team made up of powerful but disposable criminals, should they be killed or captured in action. She gets their support and go-ahead by demonstrating the control she wields over the ridiculously powerful witch Enchantress. This over 6,000-year-old being is currently possessing the young archaeologist June Moon, and is only kept in check by Waller's literal possession of her heart, that should she step out of line, she could destroy, thus killing Enchantress. But of course, control is elusive, as Enchantress slips her bonds by releasing her brother and sharing his heart till her own can be returned to her. Angry at having been imprisoned for thousands of years only to awaken and be put under the yoke of humans who used to worship them, Enchantress and her brother take over Midway City, transforming any who didn't evacuate into their super resilient thralls with black tar bubbled like faces. Enchantress then goes to work on a magic-based machine to take out the military powers of the world and to bend it to her will. So what do? Call in the Justice League. Wait, they're not a team yet? Oh, okay, I guess we'll just go with Plan B. Task Force X! So Amanda Waller takes her so-called Suicide Squad, made up of the sharpshooter mercenary Deadshot, the crazy but resourceful partner in crime of the Joker, Harley Quinn, internationally known burglar Captain Boomerang, the newly turned pacifist pyromancer El Diablo, sideshow freak Killer Croc, and expert climber Slipknot, along with her team leader Rick Flag and master swordswoman Katana, and sends them into the war zone. Now, initially, the villains of this team don't have much information as to what is really going on. Charged with helping Rick extract an asset from the battle-plagued Midway City, these supervillains are only kept in check by the small explosive devices implanted in their necks that, should they try to disobey or escape, will blow their freaking head off, as poor Slipknot can attest. Or at least he would if he still had a head. Anyway, this group of murderers, thieves, and psychopaths grudgingly work together with Katana, Rick, and his commandos, fighting off Enchantress's minions as they try to reach their extraction target, who turns out to be none other than Waller herself. Now, while all this is going on, another subplot is unfolding, that of the Joker trying to find Harley since she was arrested. In a surprising show of devotion that we will talk about a little bit later, the Joker tracks down Harley to Midway City, and the two stage an escape attempt, as the Joker has found a way to deactivate the bomb in Harley's neck. However, Waller has the copter that they escape in shot down, with Harley being thrown onto a nearby building, but Joker appearing to die in the crash. Though any DC fan worth their salt knows that this guy is harder to kill than a cockroach. So Waller takes the next helicopter trying to leave Midway with Enchantress's heart, but is attacked and captured by said Enchantress. Rick tells the group that without Waller, all the things that she promised them, reduced sentences, visitation rights, etc., were gone. So it appears that the squad must track her down. With Mr. J apparently dead, Harley joins back up with the squad, but the group falters as Deadshot uncovers the truth about their mission, Enchantress, and even Rick's personal connection with Enchantress's host, June Moon, with whom he is in love. Though there is a moment of all being lost, Deadshot is reminded of his love for his daughter and the consequences of what might happen to her if Enchantress completes her machine. He ends up rallying the troops to go up against these two super-powered entities. We have a final battle where the group takes on Enchantress and her brother, with El Diablo sacrificing himself to destroy the Enchantress's brother, and Harley faking out Enchantress to retrieve her heart and defeat her. Deadshot and the others help destroy Enchantress's machine, which had actually already been active and doing some damage. But Rick is also able to destroy Enchantress's heart, killing the sorceress, but freeing June from her control. With the mission successful and Rick having destroyed the remote that could have killed them, the members of the squad plan to go their own ways, but are stopped by Waller, who carries her own remote. But while they are taken back to Belle Reve prison, they are given some comforts for the job well done, including Deadshot getting visits from his daughter, Harley getting an espresso machine, and Killer Croc getting access to BET. The movie ends on a bit of a jarring but not surprising note as the not-so-dead Joker breaks into Belle Reve to break out Harley, who is thrilled to see her puddin'. So there you have the plot of Suicide Squad. So, I thought it was pretty good. I liked the story. I thought the villain was intriguing. I loved how she looked. Especially her interim enchantress kind of thing when she's kind of dirty, but she's got that fire in her eyes. It's really quite captivating. I mean, obviously she was pretty gorgeous in her final form, but it's an interesting kind of look at a possible villain and how beautiful they can make them while still being kind of terrifying as well. So as I said, I was entertained. I enjoyed the plot of this movie, but it definitely has its faults, but it also has its moments where it shines. One of the moments where it shines, I think, or at least the element which shines, is the tone and just visuals of this movie. It's a beautiful movie to look at. It has enough color that it pops. It's very reminiscent of an actual comic book. And, while it has that grittiness that we associate with DC, it also has this levity that is kind of needed for this kind of action comedy romper kind of thing. It's a bit of the ultra violence, but you're still having fun along the way. So there's also some people who've been saying that one of its failings was the fact that it has too many flashbacks. Now, personally, I don't really see that as being a thing. Granted, there are a lot of flashbacks at the beginning, and they kind of come one after the other, and it might seem a bit like tedious, but personally, I didn't mind that because every flashback it served a purpose and you could understand that it was totally a flashback. And so the context that these flashbacks are in is you have Amanda Waller. She is at dinner with some, chiefs of staff, trying to convince them to go to bat for her to talk to the Department of Defense on her behalf to put forth this idea of the Task Force X project. So she's basically showing her roster of who she has collected, the worst of the worst, as she says. And so as she goes through every person who's going to be on the Suicide Squad, including Rick Flag, but not including Katana or Slipknot, which is very telling, especially on Slipknot's part. She basically says how she got them to, well, not to join her team, but at least how she captured them. Granted, it's not always her who captures them. She usually just kind of calls in a favor from Batman, but, we also get, so we get a little bit of a cameo of Batman, both taking on the Joker and Harley, as we saw in the trailer, and we also get to see him take on Deadshot. And, I mean, he only gets one line, but, it's a great entrance. It's like, oh, I just need to make the right call to the right guy in Gotham, and then you just see this shadow of Batman flying in and swooping in. It's a lot of fun, and we also get a quick flash of the Flash. So I mean, it's once again very quick cameo, single line, but it just kind of gives you a feeling like, oh, okay, at least we know this guy, he's up and doing stuff. It's just a bit more flavor. So, as I said, there's more flashbacks. She talks about how, she was able, well, as it Flash caught Captain Boomerang, as a Batman caught Harley and Deadshot. It's kind of a bit unclear of how Killer Croc is caught. It's more of just, looks like, I guess, people from Argus. There's a bunch of soldiers that kind of get him in the sewer somewhere. And then I said it with, they also do, obviously, Enchantress, and how she has possessed June Moon, and then also how she has gotten control of her by going back to the same cave and finding her heart to hold on to and control her. So those are like the main flashbacks. There's maybe one or two later on, but they are so definitely a flashback. It's the main one that comes to mind is the flashback that Harley has of her, like, kind of baptism by chemicals when the Joker asks her if she'd be willing to, jump into this vat of chemicals and die for him, or possibly live for him, depending on what happens, and her going forward and doing that. So the only other flashback that I believe happens, I think there might be one more with Deadshot, I'm not 100% sure, but the only, scenes that are technically out of context because they're not actually happening are the fantasy sequences. Now, these actually happen during the final battle with Enchantress, and she kind of invades the minds of all the members of the squad and kind of, gives them a vision of what they really want in life. And while, it's kind of, it might be somewhat jarring, it's very obviously a fantasy sequence, and they even say so, as especially it's El Diablo who's, breaks out of it because he's seeing images of his dead family, and he knows that he can't take back what he has done to them. So he's, very, very adamant about, fighting this mind control. But yeah, the other sequences are so obviously fake as well. You've got Harley having this fantasy of her and a very normal looking Joker having an actual family in the suburbs. So yeah, that's definitely not going to happen. So overall, I didn't really find the flashbacks or fantasy sequences to be a problem because they fit and they weren't overpowering, personally. So the other issue that people have been bringing up is the pacing. And I kind of have to agree a little bit with this, in the sense that it starts off really strong. And those flashbacks are actually part of that strength, I think, of establishing what is going on, all this kind of stuff. But, once we get to, I guess, the inciting incident of Enchantress slipping her bonds and now kind of going AWOL and all this kind of stuff, it really picks up very quickly, and you almost don't have a minute to breathe But you're along for the ride, you're having fun, and while you might think it doesn't feel quite right, you're having too much fun to really kind of pick it apart as being like, oh, this is horribly paced. You just kind of feel odd about it, if anything. So now we get to the characters, which I guess are like the meat and potatoes of this whole thing. And what with the characters, you're kind of getting a bit of pro and con because there are some really strong characters, and then there are some issues with what they've actually done. So I mean, the main thing is that it's such a huge ensemble that there is no way that you could give enough time to give every single character that they've introduced the time needed to shine, really. So I was kind of sad about that because there was quite a few characters that got a bit of a raw deal. So like while we get a good sense of who Deadshot and Harley Quinn are, and even Amanda Waller, Rick Flag, and El Diablo, all three of them to a lesser degree, there's so many characters. You have Katana and Captain Boomerang, Killer Croc, Slipknot. Enchantress, she gets a bit more time because she's the villain, but most of those characters, they kind of get a bit, pushed to the side, if you will. So, I mean, Slipknot especially because, as I said, he's mostly there just to prove a point. He's there to die. So everybody knows that the threat that a Waller and Rick have made, saying that there is a bomb on your neck and if you disobey me, I will kill you. It's just out there to, he's there to die and prove that point. It's also kind of cool in the sense of like that one scene because you get probably the biggest, inclination of Captain Boomerang's character in the sense that he is the one who kind of talks Slipknot into doing it. And even though he says, yeah, I'm totally going to escape with you, his attempt is very half-hearted compared to Slipknot's. And I think it was more of he was testing the limits. And, if he figured, if this is real, I don't want to be the one who's dead. And so by talking Slipknot into thinking, oh, this is all fake, that they are, we're free to go. We can go whenever we want to. There's no bomb in our neck. Go through with this. He was totally manipulating him, and kind of shows just how cutthroat this burglar can be. So Killer Croc, on the other hand, he was, he looked really cool, but I will say this one thing. It was a little disconcerting when, I don't know if I have a still for this yet, but when he takes off his jacket and his like hoodie and all that kind of stuff, and you see his body compared to the size of his head, he's actually not very big. He's kind of scrawny, like not scrawny. I mean, he's still a big guy, but compared to the size of his head to the size of his body, it seems awkward, or at least that's what I remember it being kind of, it didn't quite fit because, Croc's supposed to be this huge guy, right? So that was kind of a little bit weird. And finally, we have Katana, who, I loved the look of her, and I really liked that she only spoke in Japanese, save for that one line. You don't get a huge sense of her character other than, what happened to her husband, her magical sword. But, the question as to, she is a good guy. So how did she get, tied up with Argus and, Waller and Rick, and how did she, come to be with them, and why does she care? All you really get from her is one line, saying that like criminals must be punished or something. And I don't know, it just seems kind of shallow for a character development, and I think, a lot more could be done. Now, that being said, supposedly, there was a lot of edits done after after Batman v Superman struggled so much. They went back and they did re-edits, they did reshoots, they did lots of stuff to hopefully make this film better. And I'm kind of curious to see what they had before. Mostly because, like, Warner Brothers is kind of known to be a little heavy-handed with their edits, so I think a lot of cool stuff ended up on the cutting room floor. I mean, the same thing has kind of been said for Batman v Superman, that the extended edition makes so much more sense. There's a lot more to it. It's just that it got cut out. So I would love to see an extended edition because I think there'll be a lot more characterization, because I'm sure some of you will go out to see the movie, and I promise you, there are actually scenes that were in the trailers that are no longer in the movie. It's weird. So, I mean, they're not huge scenes or anything like that, but you'll recognize it. And just on a quick side note, I don't know if you guys are aware quite yet, but apparently Jeff Johns, who was kind of head of DC, like I mean he still is obviously, but he's actually been given a lot more power over the cinematic universe, which in this it's actually known as the DCEU, which stands for the DC Entertainment Universe. But apparently he's going to have a lot of say on the finished products, and hopefully that'll mean that, you know, Warner Brothers will kind of back off, let him do his thing, because, you know, he really is a great writer and director. He's done a lot of stuff. He's actually written a couple episodes for both Arrow and The Flash, and like they're pretty iconic episodes. So hopefully this will be, you know, a step forward for DC, and that these films will only get better. So I'm really excited for that. So getting back to the characters, let's first off talk about Deadshot. And I also have to say that he's mostly just a slightly grittier version of Will Smith. That is to say, you know, Will Smith plays a lot of the same characters that are badass, but, you know, still lovable and stuff like that. And that's very much what Deadshot is. And that's not a read. That's not to say that he was bad. He was actually, once again, Will Smith plays very likable characters. And he what he does, I mean, it might be kind of repetitive, but what he does well. He puts forth this image of, you know, a really awesome father who just happens to do really terrible things for a living. But he's got that, you know, inserted cockiness, which we kind of love. And, you know, he gives a lot of humor, but at the same time, he is relatable. So overall, you know, he's a lot of fun to watch. So even though people say, oh, he's just playing Will Smith, do you know what? It works for this. It really does. So moving on to the other main star of this movie, which is Margot Robbie, who plays Harley Quinn. I can safely say that I'm actually very pleased. There was a lot of concern whether or not she would make a good Harley or not. Everyone was complaining, oh, she doesn't have like the Brooklyn accent that, you know, made her character famous in the Batman animated TV series back in the 90s. And it's true, she doesn't really have like a full Brooklyn accent, but she does have this twang that especially comes out when she talks about Mr. J or, you know, her puddin'. It's really quite cool. And I think it works, you know, well enough. And in a way, I kind of think, well, as much as I love the animated Harley, would that voice be over the top for a live action? So I think you know, Margot has found a really good balance.
I thought I told you to get gas!
We're broke, remember? What was I supposed to do? Fill the tank, shoot the guy, and drive off?
Mm-hmm.
Now you tell me.
So we're going to get more into her characterization a little bit later, because there's a lot more to talk about with Harley, especially her relationship with Mr. J. So let's we're going to move on and we'll come back to that, I promise. So next up we have Viola Davis, who was playing Amanda Waller, aka The Wall. Now, it's neat to see that there's a bunch of critics who are not familiar with the character and were very off-put by her cold, cutthroat, ruthless ways. I mean, yes, this woman, she totally up and murdered a bunch of her own people just because they didn't have, like, the clearance to be looking at the things that they were dealing with. I mean, wrong place, wrong time. Kind of sucks. But this is her character, and, you know, as a DC fan, you will recognize this is who she is. She often says, you know, no one screws the wall. Everything for her is about leverage, not friendship. I mean, this is not Suicide Squad's best friends race. She is out there to get things done, and she does. And I kind of love that about her, and she's unapologetic. You know, even when, you know, things blow up in her face and, you know, Enchantress gets loose, even though she thought she could control her, she doesn't apologize. She's just like, okay, I got a bad situation. How do I fix this? And yeah, she has to be cutthroat. And I mean, that's why she even creates the Suicide Squad in the first place, because they are disposable. She can throw them under the bus. And, you know, and maybe in some ways she's like thinking, okay, these people can, you know, pay their debt to society by doing one good thing with their lives. So it's kind of, I can understand why some people might be like, oh, well, it's kind of sad seeing, you know, like the government as like the bad guys, or at least morally gray, but I mean, have you seen any film about, like, shady government conspiracies? I mean, it's kind of all over the place. So why are you really that surprised? Anyway, seems kind of silly. So let's move to Harvey and see what he thought of the movie, because I haven't gotten his opinion. So Harvey, who was your favorite character that we haven't talked about yet? El Diablo, yeah, he was pretty cool. Well, not cool, he was actually quite hot. And I don't mean that, oh, I mean, yeah, he might be good looking. I mean, at least underneath the face tattoo stuff, I'm not really down for that personally. But, I mean, he was cool looking. But when we talk about him being hot, we mean his core temperature is listed as 666 degrees Fahrenheit. That is ridiculously hot. So it's kind of interesting to note, at least in this version, I will admit, I didn't do my research on El Diablo. He's one of the few characters I don't know very much about in the DC universe. He actually, his powers, we believe, are actually demonic. That's why you get the kind of, evil number scheme going on there. And he even says that his powers don't come from God, so how could God take them away? So I think he's trying to say that his powers are totally demonic. Plus, when we get to see him at the end fighting Enchantress's brother, he kind of turns into this giant flame demon. Like, he's like not seven, more than that. He's probably close to 10 feet tall. And, he's just this being of flame. And it's really cool to see. So I definitely think that there is something magical going on, especially as we are dealing with Enchantress. So obviously magic is totally, in the realm of possibilities. But I was kind of irritated by the fact that how he died, I really, it didn't make much sense to me. I mean, he's there holding Enchantress's brother in one place so they can set off this bomb, all this kind of stuff. And, he holds him there and, sacrifices himself as the bomb goes off. But it's a bomb. It is an explosion of fire. He creates explosions of fire. I understand he has a physical body, but, like, shouldn't he have been able to withstand that if he could withstand his house being on fire, if, being engulfed in flame? It really, I don't know, it just didn't make any sense. And I kept on waiting for him to pop up out of that hole and be like, hey, guys. But it didn't happen, and I was kind of disappointed. I understand that it was for his character development of, like, this is his atonement, for what he did to his family, and this way he can be with them once again. Still, it kind of, I don't know, it just seemed like a throwaway of a really cool character. But I guess if they ever do a second Suicide Squad, they'll have to get more members, and so this kind of opens up a slot for somebody new. So Rick was also pretty cool. I will admit, like, he's likable, and as you can see, he has feelings, especially for June to begin with. But then, even though at first he's like kind of disgusted by the rest of the squad, he thinks they are criminals and vermin and all this stuff. But as they go through all this stuff, and like he is saved multiple times by these people. Granted, it's kind of a self-serving action as Deadshot keeps on reminding the squad as Rick is apparently about to be killed or carried off by Enchantress's minions, and Harley's like, oh, good riddance, and he's like, if he dies, we die. So it is very self-serving, but as he sees these people, actually kind of they don't grow a conscience per se, but they, the fact that they back him up and they become part of his team. He does actually, you can see he totally cares for them. So that's kind of cool to see. It's just a nice kind of little progression of his character of, these caring for people that he at first thought were kind of scum. So the last character I want to talk about is kind of like the most problematic, which would be Jared Leto's Joker. Now the performance is fine. I thought it was pretty good. It reminded me a lot of Jack Nicholson's Joker mixed in with like just a dash of Heath Ledger's Joker, because you get that kind of crazy affect to the way he speaks, but all his actions are very rational, at least within his frame of mind. And I mean, not to a normal person, but to the Joker, one thing leads to another, and that's he has a plan. So, as I said, he's a lot more closer to Jack Nicholson's gangster version. But my problem with him was I think it's probably more to do with the writers and the situation, which was his uncharacteristic devotion to Harley, which is kind of like on the complete opposite end of what Joker and Harley's relationship is, which is it's abusive. It's a horrible relationship. He is just constantly demeaning her, gaslighting her, physically harming her, like treating her like shit. And then, but she always keeps on coming back to him, which is what's really sad. And it's very indicative of a domestic, abuse relationship. It's just taken to a much bigger extreme. Like, yeah, there is points where you're thinking, okay, yeah, you're seeing parts of like his abusive relationship. I mean, he abandons her when he crashes the car into the harbor, and Batman has to save her. But overall, it just drives me nuts that he goes after her and he goes through a lot of trouble to get Harley back. He goes into this war zone where there are monsters and witches and things getting shot out of the sky, and he goes to save her and, free her from the control of Amanda Waller and Argus and all that kind of stuff. And he doesn't do that once. He does that at least twice, because he even breaks into Belle Rev at the end of the movie. So he's almost obsessed with her as she is with him, which kind of changes the power dynamic between these two characters. And while some people might, appreciate that, as a DC fan, I was kind of more uncomfortable by it, because I know this relationship to be, abusive, and it is still abusive in this movie. It's just not as overt as we're used to it being. So yeah, getting to Harley and Joker's relationship, the version in this film is a lot more subtle. There is a torture scene at the very beginning where, you're having the flashback, seeing, her falling in love with him asking for the machine gun, her helping him, and then him kind of almost turning on her by, torturing her with the electroshock therapy. But she even says that she can take it. And she has already kind of been gaslighted into, believing that she loves him, that he cares for her, all this kind of stuff. And so, as I said, the abuse is a lot more about the fact that he has changed who she is in the sense of her trajectory in life. She was this, very bright a psychiatrist, and now if you look at her, her life is completely different. And she will do anything that the Joker asks her to. She is kind of, she's lost her self-respect, or at least her sense of self-worth, which is just, it's pretty awful when you think about it. It's just a lot more subdued compared to like him physically smacking her around or something. I mean, he gets her to jump off into off this high scaffolding into a vat of very dangerous chemicals that bleach her skin and do God knows what else to her. And he's made her, even willing to sleep with other men if he says so. I mean, granted, in that scene, they kind of went back and forth with that, and the guy kind of started realizing he was stepping on Joker's, I guess, for better lack of word, even though I don't believe this at all, but his territory, as least as some men would see it. It's pretty terrible. But anyway, like, she has basically decided that he loves me, and so he would never make me do something that would be bad for me, which unfortunately is a terrible mindset to have, and that's where the abuse comes from. So some people also might claim that because of the violence that's used against the female characters, it also is misogynistic, but it really doesn't make much sense, in the sense that, like, okay, yes, Joker's abusive relationship, whether it's, emotional, mental, physical, that is totally, yeah, there's something kind of inherently misogynistic about it, because it feels very much like a domestic violence situation. But the other violence that the female characters take place in are because they are in a fight. They literally are in a fight. So, you've got Katana, you've got Enchantress, and you've got Harley, and they are all fighting. They even fight each other at parts. So, and it's not about them being feminine or female or anything like that. They're fighting because there are enemies, and it is an action film. So the men are doing the exact same thing. The stakes that they are experiencing are the exact same as the men. So it's indicative of an action film. Even the one scene that some people have been citing as like, oh, that's so, misogynistic, which is when Harley is punched in the face by Batman because she says, oh, some people were laughing at it. Personally, yeah, I didn't laugh at it, but that situation was, okay, why did he punch her? It's because, first of all, she was disoriented and was trying to kill him by swinging around a knife, but they were actually at the bottom of the harbor. He had a breathing apparatus, she did not. And she is trying to kill him, and he knows that she's going to run out of air pretty soon, and God knows what else has happened to her by, going halfway through a windshield. So he needs to defuse this situation as quickly as possible. So Batman being Batman, he knocks her out. And that way he can drag her up to the surface so she can breathe. So, I mean, yeah, it is a violent end to get what he needs to be done, to be able to save her. But if it had been, the Joker, Riddler, Penguin, Two-Face, any other Batman villain in the exact same situation, he would have done the exact same thing. So it is not a violence that is based on gender. So overall, past the whole thing with, Harley and Joker's abusive domestic-ish relationship, I would say this is not a misogynistic film. It is an action film, and yeah, of course there's going to be violence, and because these women are main characters, or at least Harley is for sure, if we want to have stories where we have female main characters, usually there has to be a conflict in a story, and in an action film, conflict is usually violence. So, of course, they're going to be in the midst of the violence, but they're going to be, they're going to be warriors, they're going to be soldiers, they're going to be, it's not about them being victims. It is about them, fighting on the same side as these guys, and just showing that they can kick just as much butt. So, yeah, I don't agree with this whole, labeling this entire film, misogynistic. So that is our thoughts on Suicide Squad. I mean, mine and Harvey's. Obviously, we didn't go into everything, but we figure, you guys can go out there, go watch the movie. I'm sure you'll have a good time, and you can judge for yourself what you think of it. Because obviously, our opinions aren't your opinions. But we would love to hear what you thought of the movie. Write some comments in the comment section below, what you thought of it, all that kind of stuff. But if you enjoyed this review, please like and subscribe to Neuroworld Slackers for this show, our Game of Thrones lore show, A Cup of Ice and Fire, our DC Comics lore show, Unmasked, which will eventually actually deal with the characters in this movie, but might be a bit of a while. We're still dealing with Batman and his family, and it's a lot of history there. But if you're also interested in DC Comics, we highly recommend you check out our newest show, which is The Realness, where we break down some of the newest movie trailers and TV trailers out there, trying to pick together and, suss out what might actually happen in the movies or upcoming seasons of some of your favorite characters. So right now, so far, we have two that are out, are the Wonder Woman trailer from San Diego Comic-Con, as well as the Justice League trailer. So, you get to watch the trailer, which is always awesome, and then you get to, if you're interested in theory crafting, join us as we pick it apart and try to suss out what we're actually seeing and what cool Easter eggs were dropped in the trailer. So definitely check them out. They're a lot of fun. And until then, hope you guys have a good day, and we'll talk to you later. Bye!